Welcome to Mornings with Megan. I'm here to give you the information, tools, and resources you need to make the best decisions for your body and your perimenopause.
Dr. Sarah Berg is a board-certified OB-GYN and certified menopause practitioner who has spent over a decade caring for women and now focuses on transforming how menopause is understood through education. She is the founder of Selfority, a digital platform delivering evidence-based women's health courses designed to feel as informative as a medical textbook, but far more engaging and accessible. She also leads Menopause at Work, an initiative helping organizations better support women in midlife by connecting menopause to performance, retention, and workplace culture. Dr. Berg writes for Katie Couric Media, Stat News, and Unbiased Science, and she has been featured on Parents.com. She speaks nationally on menopause, cardiovascular risk for women, and women's health in the workplace, including at venues such as the Clinton Presidential Center. Known for her clear, honest, and relatable style, she is passionate about using education as a form of preventative care, helping women feel informed, supported, and not alone during the menopause transition. Hello, Dr. Berg, and welcome to Mornings with Megan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
It has been a long time coming. We met, we've chatted, we've done the things, and I feel like we had so much to talk about, and I'm very excited to continue the conversation on the podcast.
Absolutely. I felt like our initial conversations, I was like, we need to talk more or maybe all the time because this is fun.
All the time. I would love to dig in with a story from your practice. I read an article that you were talking about where you described something happening in your exam room, and I would love to hear more about what you would call the slope shoulder moment. What was that, and why did it stop you in your tracks?
So I am an OB-GYN. So of course I see women at least once a year, multiple times a year, often. So I get to know the people I'm practicing and taking care of. So there were these women that were amazing. They'd come in, we would do the exam, but we'd also have this, tell me about like what you were doing at work or what was your latest fun vacation or, what triathlon are you running? They were just cool women that we had great conversations just because it was our time to connect. And then they would come in after having these, and I'd say they straight back, full of life, full of activity. And then all of a sudden come in one year, and I had to give it a name because that's exactly what it was. And what you said was it. They came in with sloped shoulders. So they go from being these confident, excited, full of life women to almost having feelings like just physically, you could see feelings of like, there's less of me. I don't want to take up space. There's something not right. And because I was blessed to be able to see them multiple years and multiple times before that, I knew that this was a drastic change. And it wasn't just one woman. It was pretty much along the line, most women when they hit this certain point in life. And so it was that light bulb moment for me. And as a gynecologist, I'm working with women from, 12 years old, having their first period to end of life. So I'm learning and training in the spectrum of women's health. But what I was seeing is that this midlife moment where they were coming in with the shoulders was something very dramatic and drastic and happening across the board. So then I wanted to dig in. I wanted to, figure out what it is that universally seemed to put these women in the slope shoulder moment. But then I also wanted to figure out what I wasn't doing and what we weren't doing to prepare them because it wasn't a confidence issue. It was something else going on. And so that was really my starting point for figuring out how I wanted to do something bigger to help women, not just individually in the room, because that is powerful and that is wonderful. But I was afraid that we were having these individual moments and then how many women weren't getting this information and weren't allowed to have this opportunity to have this information. And so then they were going to slope shoulder and maybe they were never coming out of it. And that was important to me. So that really was what kind of got this ball rolling.
And tell me more, when you see this slope shoulder moment, is this something that you're able to work through with your patients? Did you have time to talk through that and to sort of dig into what is actually causing this slope shoulder? Because there's so many things happening in the menopause transition.
Well, and that was part of it too. I mean, we've all gone to the doctor's office. I'm a person, so I've been a patient as well, and there's not a lot of time in those office visits. So when I had these people and I could tell there was a seismic change that happened, first of all, I realized that I hadn't learned enough in my training to really fully grasp the plethora of things going on and how I can do the best as a physician. So that was a moment for me. It was a like humbling but important moment where I saw there's more I need to learn to help them. But then also the other side of it, just like you said, was I able to undo that? Well, the answer is not in that 15 minutes I was given with them, but it was a recurring, if I could get people back in, if I could to have more time. And I kept feeling like there's not enough time in this office to really explain something that's I mean, just like when you hit puberty and you have videos to tell you and you have classes to tell you, there was none of that when we're having almost the exact same hormonal shift on the other side. And no one's talking about it ahead of time. So there's no prep course for it. You feel like you're just dropped in. And a lot of times, and this is one of the points, is when I was seeing them, they had been trying to manage it for so long, you don't get to the sloped shoulder until you've kind of given up management. So they had probably been dealing with this longer than they let anyone know. It only was that they were so far in the hole that they were starting to have physical signs of it. So it wasn't just undoing that moment. It's looking back and figuring out all the things that they thought were self problems that were really biology problems. And not problems per se, but transitions that they weren't aware of. And also other people outside of them weren't expecting, so they didn't understand why this person wasn't acting the exact same they had been for the 10 years before. And so just like, sorry,
So common. Yeah.
yeah. And just like when you have a preteen and they're starting to have the changes and you're like, okay, I'm going to give them grace because I know they're going through something. So even though there's something where we're not hitting things the same way, I understand that something's going on with them and I'm going to give them the grace. We don't have to talk about it. I just know what's going on. No one's giving you that same grace at this point.
No, the expectations are always for a lot of women that they keep carrying the load that they've been carrying. And then there's this internal shame or guilt that I see with a lot of women where they feel like they have somehow failed themselves. They failed their family. They failed the workplace because they're not able to carry on with the way that they were. And what I hear you saying is that this isn't about a lack of ability or a failure that they have, completed. It is about the actual biological changes that are happening and their body is no longer able to perform in the same way. And it may not be a problem, as you mentioned, but it is a transition. And so tell us more about what that looks like. What might someone experience if they are new to the perimenopause space and they are kind of reaching that place? They haven't hit slope shoulder yet, but they're starting to say, there's some weird things happening in my body. I'm having a hard time figuring it out. What are some things that you would commonly see in your practice?
I think the most important are the first symptoms that we often overlook as a self issue. And there are a lot of the changes because just a little backpedal, estrogen, which is going up, down, all around during perimenopause or that transition to menopause, is a hormone that goes all over our body. And I think this is very misunderstood. People think of estrogen as a reproductive organ. They think of it as something that's just ovaries, uterus, that's where it lives. But it goes almost everywhere. And I feel like one of the main areas it goes that people don't expect is the brain. So a lot of the first symptoms that people think is something wrong with them is that the change in how the estrogen is playing in your brain, which is a organ that is very important to who you are, it manifests in ways that they weren't expecting. So when we have a up, down, all around of estrogen going to the brain, that's going to affect almost every area of the brain, but especially the prefrontal cortex at the front of the brain. And that is where we are used to being the multitaskers of the world. Women are great at, I would call it, keeping the tabs open. So you can have 16 tabs open on your computer and you're able to flip through them, no big deal. You're going from your office brain to your dog needs to go to the vet brain to your what am I going to pick up for dinner brain. And that's easy normally. But when we have that change and your body's doing this buffering with the estrogen, your prefrontal cortex isn't getting the signaling it's used to. So we go from being really great multitaskers to being adequate. But we're not used to being adequate. We're used to being fabulous at something. And just so you know, your multitasking ability when you're in this buffering stage is still better than most of your male counterparts. So you're just now feeling how they normally feel, but it feels like you're not doing your best. So you feel like you're not doing well. So your prefrontal cortex is and you're like, I'm losing my mind. My brain isn't working the way it should. And then you start having these plain thoughts of, is this early signs of dementia? Am I having mental engagement issues? I've heard women have more Alzheimer's than men. Is this my slippery slope I'm on? And that's scary. And then another area it hits big is the emotional area. And that's one people don't think about and they make fun of a lot. And you hear comedians talking about, my wife raged at this, or like, watch out for her, which is so unfair and so not right, because yes, you're getting a change in your receptors in the amygdala where your emotions are. So something that wouldn't have triggered you 5 years before can maybe send you off in a way that you don't even recognize yourself. So again, they're thinking they're going down some sort of mental disease spiral. So again, you've got your feelings like you might be going through early dementia. You can't tolerate the people like you used to. And then your brain is also where the heat receptors are and temperature receptors are. And that's getting a little short-sighted. So thinking might be having hot sweats and night sweats and hot flashes. There we go. There's my word. Another one, word finding. There, that one leads me to word finding. And that's another area, like word finding, memories that were right there before that are long gone. So I feel like those things, and people, when they hear this, they go, oh, that's me. And this may be happening before the classic symptoms people talk about, like the really irregular periods or no periods. And usually before the hot flashes and night sweats, these other symptoms are showing up. So that's the problem, is we've down regulated or not talked about some of the earlier symptoms. So people think they're not dealing with this until they get to the very irregular periods or the hot flush or night sweats that they may or may not have.
It's such an interesting segmenting out the sort of early perimenopause versus later perimenopause, because that early perimenopause, where you're talking about right now with feeling like you might be going down some sort of mental disease spiral, but it's actually these early symptoms. And it sounds a lot like regulatory problems. I like when you have a little kid and you have to help regulate them when they're toddlers. It's like when we get older, our calibration is off and we can't do that self regulating that we're so used to. And then we're raging and hating everybody in the world. We think that we want to move away from our family for a week. We want to go sleep. We don't want to talk to anybody. And I personally have experienced that. And I work with lots of women who really do exactly what you say, think that they are going crazy. I mean, they come in and they're like, I have seen the neurologist. I have had a consult with a dementia person. I have talked to all sorts of people, and everyone says you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you, because no one is looking for this pattern that you're talking about. So it seems like women are getting lost in the shuffle. And you mentioned earlier that you didn't feel that you got enough education around this as an OB-GYN. And everyone thinks, well, if you're an OB-GYN, you know all the things about reproductive hormones. And it's not just, as you mentioned, a reproductive transition. But tell us a little bit more about why it was challenging for you to find that information and feeling like you needed to do extra to get to a place where you could actually help the women that were sitting in front of you.
A major reason it's challenging is because I mean, you won't be shocked by this, there's not enough research done. And that's a big issue. We are woefully behind on all of women's health in research, but especially this stage. And some of it, and we could go through a whole litany, but some of it's because of that study that was done almost 30 years ago that really put a halt on women thinking that using hormonal medication was a good idea for them. When you have a study that says something is really bad, no one's going to keep studying. They're going to take that at face value. So that WHI study, if you've heard about it, and if you haven't, uh, we could talk about it really quickly, but it's a study that was done that really turned people off from thinking hormonal treatment during this time period was a good option for anyone, which is a really big statement to make. And definitely we've undone a lot of the misunderstandings around that. And definitely when we talk about the black box warning that I think we're going to talk about in a little bit, it kind of plays into why where we're at. But we don't have the research. And then when that happened, everyone said hormones are not good for women. It kind of stopped the medical education as well. Because if you can't give someone something for a stage, it kind of left people feeling like then this is just something that people are going to have to deal with. So we're going to have to treat it as a almost like a non-issue. So doctors that were trained after the WHA study, so in 2002 and beyond, which is most of the physicians you're in practice being taken care of, were given maybe an hour of 2 lecture period in their training on menopause at all, and much less on what we can do to help women during that period. Now, comparing that to I have made a course for women to learn about menopause, and that course is 6 hours. Again, it's over a long period of time, but it's 6 hours, and that's just giving you the fun overview of it. So it's a huge topic that deserves a lot of time. And as a trained OB-GYN, I think in the 4 years that I spent only learning about women's health and being someone that's being trained 80 hours a week in women's health, I maybe received 4 lectures on it. I came out. You think you're well trained to take care of the whole woman. You've learned a lot of different things, but when you meet that person and you're seeing them over and over, if you have any ability to self-realize, you realize I'm woefully unprepared for that. And that feels really bad as someone who committed their life to caring for others. And it feels really bad when you also look back at how you've been taught to tell them what to do or how to take care of themselves, what you're giving them, which wasn't very much. That was my pivot point to say, I need to learn more. These women are so important. They're at this pivotal time in their life. They've got 30 to 40% of their life ahead of them. And we're treating them as an afterthought. And we're telling them just deal with it. And that is an unfair way to care for women. So there is a certification for menopause training. So I stepped away. I completely engulfed myself in learning about menopause. I received that training, and it's almost like it was just like a beginning of a door. That training just opened my eyes to how many things that I was missing. And it's just been so overwhelming and amazing to see how many ways we can care for women if we open our eyes to really expanding on that time period. But also giving your doctor grace, know that they came through this time period where they weren't given the education, and they are taking care of women. If even in the gynecologist, they're taking care of women from, remember that 12-year-old and having baby time period and end of life issues. So they're taking care of the spectrum of women. So it may be really difficult for them to find the space to do what I did. And I did what I did because I wanted this to be my focus. So it gives them grace, but also say maybe this is a time I should find one of those doctors that thinks it's an important focus and pivot to doing at least this part of my care with those doctors.
So, with that period of time when you decided to extend your education, really open that door and dive more into menopause, you eventually started building a foundation that you turned into a business. And it sounds like you left your clinical practice, which is not a small something.
No.
For a doctor, it's not something that most doctors do, but you did that to build something. And it seems like what you kept seeing in the exam room made you decide that the solution was education and not more appointments. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and Selfority?
Yes, absolutely. So Selfority is my youngest child. It takes a lot of my time in the best way possible, and I love it so much. So Selfority is my education platform, and the name is a way I want women to think about themselves. Selfority means self-priority. My tagline is female health prioritized, because what I know I have always done and what many women have done is they don't even put themselves on the list of things they care about. When you make a list of the things that are important to you on your list of things to do, A lot of times I say, I just want you to get on that list of prioritizing your self care. By making this statement, I'm saying, this is what's important to me. You prioritizing yourself. Education is preventative care. If you can learn, a lot of times naming something will take away a lot of the stigma of it. So if we can give you education in a way that's interesting and worth delving into, it may change not only just the baseline knowledge, but it may change your ability to transition and what the last third or fourth of your life will be. My desire is to bring women education and hopefully bring it to them earlier rather than later. And I hear this all the time. I wish I would have learned this in my 30s. And understanding that sometimes thinking about preventive care, you're thinking about something that hasn't happened yet. So bringing you education so that you know what's going to happen or what's happening, and you can open your eyes to what you can, what you can do to manage or treat, kind of giving you a really evidence-based open way of looking at things. We're not a one size fits all. And if anyone ever tells you this is how you do this, then they don't know you, and they don't know enough about the area, because there is never a one size fits all. So it's giving you as many options are available that are studied and understood and have background to them, and talking you through, like, just like we did a little with the brain, talking you through each area. I am a writer at heart, so I always love storytelling. So I try to bring stories and imagery so you can put something to it. So my brain imagery is, I would call it the New York bureaus. And each one of the areas of the brain is a bureau. And we kind of talk through what's happening in the bureau as we go through the course. But it's talking about the brain, it's talking about your bones, talking about your heart, it's talking about things you don't even realize are being affected during this time, because we are so under taught about how estrogen is everywhere, because we are taught again to think that estrogen is just about making babies or not making babies, which is the one of the multiple areas it is helping us at. And if I can get through anything, that is it. And so when we learn that estrogen is everywhere, it'll help you feel less like you're losing yourself, because you're realizing, oh, as I transition, this may happen to me. It may not, but I'm not going to think that I'm going nuts or that my body's betraying me. I'm going to realize this is a transition. There's another side. But if I can do these things, I can maybe weather the transition better. And I may be able to come to the other side, which I think is our best third of our life, because we're out of that stage of our life where we're having to justify to others. And we're hopefully able to just be like, this is me, this is who I am, and take it or leave it side of ourselves. So I want to get people there and feeling like their best selves rather than feeling like they're irrelevant, which a lot of people start to feel. They're saying, hey, society doesn't care about me, I'm irrelevant. But that is bull. I won't use the other side of that. That's bull. It's not true. And this can truly be, and I've seen it over and over when people are taught how to manage the stage, they don't feel like they've lost part of themselves. They feel like they've gained something, and they can transition to a better understanding of themselves. If you can't tell, empowering is important to me. So it's about empowering, educating, and exploring this in a way that it will give you so many aha moments. And I don't only do it through a course. I'm really active on social media because I think it's a space that most people get their education from, medical education. So I want to be there so you can see videos, see short clips, maybe be able to search through, say, something's happening with my eyes. Is this menopause? And then you can learn that it might actually be, and kind of all the unusual things that may just be you. You might not have any other friends dealing with the issue, but it doesn't mean it's not part of what's going on with your body's transition.
I love the idea of putting yourself on the priority list, because I find that that is also something I speak with a lot of women about, is that you have to take care of you, because you can't do all of these magical things when you're trying to juggle everything and your bandwidth is there. You start dropping balls. If you're not on that list and restoring that, you're not going to be able to do all of the multitasking, keep all the tabs open that you were talking about. So with Selfority and this course that you have, what are some of the most, I don't want to say interesting, curious or aha moments that women experience when you're talking about estrogen touching every part of the body? I mean, you talked about the brain already, and of course, we talk about the reproductive part, but what are some other places that estrogen touches a woman's body that she might not be aware of?
A big one is joints. So there's a lot of joint issues around, and I see this one a lot. Actually, I always feel like I'm the creeper in the gym where someone's talking about they've got frozen shoulder, or they thought they had arthritis, but they've gone to every specialist under the sun and no one thinks they have arthritis. That could be menopause because the estrogen receptors are in your joints, they're in your bones, they're through all your tissues. And so when the transition happened, you get achy, but there's no medical diagnosis, orthopedic thing happening. So sometimes you feel dismissed and you spend a lot of money getting dismissed. If you're going to different specialists, getting different imaging, getting different labs, there's a lot of money spent personally trying to figure out what's going on. But if you understand, a lot of people go, oh, that's why I literally couldn't move my shoulder above my head for a long time. And the frozen shoulder is shockingly common in this stage. I have decided I need to make a menopause sports bra because imagine trying to get a sports bra on when your
Yeah.
shoulder
How are
won't
you getting
work
that over your head?
or off when it's sweaty. There's so many
Right.
questions I have for more people need to be talking about. Again, more people need to be talking about this. Another one is sexual. People are very uncomfortable talking about sexual issues and coming in hot. I have a whole section on not sex per se, but genital urinary, which is kind of that whole area and understanding the changes happening there. One of my favorite analogies that people used to crack up in the office with is I call it the cat on the carpet because I don't care if you're, yeah, see, I don't care if you're having sex or not. There are changes happening that are irritating. And when it's happening in an area that we don't talk about, like you're not going to like, you can itch your arm in public, but you can't itch your vagina in public. Or you can, but
Right.
I don't know if you'll get arrested or
You're going to
not.
get looks.
Yeah, you're going to, at least of you're going to get looks. But when we don't have estrogen flowing to that area, the area gets dry, irritated. And so not only can it make it painful to have sex, and then that's a whole rabbit hole that ends up becoming a problem for women and relationships and self-worth feelings. But then even if you're not, and that's okay, it's really uncomfortable to sit all day on a really dry area of your body and feel like you would love to be that cat on the carpet, just rubbing it back and forth, but you can't because you're like in an office or in a meeting or doing something. So there are so many things that people think they just have to deal with that's just age related, that there are amazing things we could do and that we should be doing. And there are a lot of advocates for this, and I am on board. If you want to do whole body estrogen or not, that is 100% a personal choice. But I strongly recommend if you do whole body estrogen or not, using vaginal estrogen. Vaginal estrogen is just an estrogen that goes to the vaginal tissue. It doesn't go anywhere else. It's not systemic or all over your body. This was the reason why a lot of doctors really pushed for that black box warning to go away, because the framing on a vaginal estrogen was the same that was whole body estrogen, which was making it really scary. When you have a black box warning, when you open up a package, it reads like your doctor hates you and wants you to go away, and they didn't talk you through this, and you should be scared and never touch this product, which is obviously the opposite of when we're trying to give you something. So vaginal estrogen should be for every woman because it's helping you not ever have to deal with the cat on the carpet, least of. So that's just a little segue of that, but there's a lot more reasons it's helpful, but that is one of them, and it's worth considering even if you don't want to do whole body estrogen. And even if you do whole body estrogen, you could still do vaginal estrogen. It's like the least of, it's like the tiny Band-Aid on the cut.
And it sounds like we have so many options. And one of the things that you had mentioned is the black box warning. I actually, for anybody that's watching this, I brought my own little black box warning from my vaginal estrogen because I know all of these things. I know about the Women's Health Initiative. I understand that this black box warning is wrong. But even knowing that, When you open this up and it says serious side effects include stroke, blood clot, breast cancer, severe allergic reactions, heart disease, cancer of the ovaries, cancer of the uterus. Like, this is scary. And I know it's wrong, but still, I opened my box. I got my vaginal estrogen from my doctor, and I was like, I am so stoked about this. But this little insert right now gives me pause. So I can only imagine how women who didn't have a doctor to explain to it or hadn't read about the Women's Health Initiative would have felt when they're opening this and they've had this whole long conversation with you. They don't want the cat scratch anymore. They're sort of feeling like this is the right choice. And then they get that paper and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if it's worth it. So can you tell us a little bit more about the 2025 November announcement that the FDA is removing that and what that means from a vaginal estrogen versus what you were talking about, systemic estrogen? What does the removal warning mean for both of those two things?
So, truthfully, removing it from all estrogen, I believe, is the right answer. There's definitely different people that feel differently about it, but least of vaginal estrogen, I think that black box warning is an overstatement. It's a complicated story. This WHI study done in 2002, so that is a long time ago. Actually, this part of the study was done because we thought estrogen was the answer to the entire world. We were at that point giving it to every woman for everything, and maybe not in the most appropriate ways, but we were giving it to every woman, and we were saying, this is the magic bullet. And we were just trying to prove it was the magic bullet. And this part of the study was actually on how it was going to improve heart health for women. But the setup of the study wasn't perfect. And we know that now. You learn as you go along. They said, okay, women that are going to have heart issues are going to be the older women on the side, because we know older women are more likely to have it. So we're going to check using estrogen on these older women. This is not about hormone symptoms. This is not about, hot flashes, night sweats, all that. This is about making people not have heart attacks. And we think this is going to help women. So the average age in the study was over 60. Now, most women starting hormone therapy are starting because they're having symptoms. So most of them are in their 40s or 50s when they start now. But this was, again, women not even necessarily having symptoms. They were only on it for heart health. And they were using old school medicines with old school doses. So they started this study.
Remeron and all that stuff. Horse urine, right?
Oh, yes.
Pregnant mare urine. Yes.
Pregnant mare urine. So again, full story on that. Like, Premarin is actually from horse urine. That was the medicine they were using. This is not what most women are getting prescribed today, unless it's the best choice for them, because we figure, again, you're not one size fits all. The horse urine may be the best one for you, but again, it was not around their symptoms. It was around just heart health. So they started it with these older women, and then all of a sudden they stopped it and made this big announcement before they'd actually showcase the study. So they came on and said, oh no, we need to stop it because we're giving women breast cancer and we're actually hurting their heart. Now, when you unpiece the story and you actually look at the data and you look at what age ranges were having the problems, the older women that were started were the ones having more issue, because this is the same reason why we say don't start hormone therapy too late, because then it can be a problem. Because I would say, we know your vessels get tighter, your heart vessels and whatnot get more plaque and whatnot, and get stiffer because the estrogen has gone away, but it had been gone for a while, and then you give it back and you've made all this plaque, you've made the stiff vessels, and now you're loosening it up. That's when scary stuff happens. All that plaque that's sitting in there is going to cause a stroke or a heart attack because it's loosened up and going places. So yes, it was harmful in the older women, which is still why we're really conscientious about starting hormone therapy too late. But when we looked at the data and looked at the younger end of the time frame of people getting it, we weren't seeing the same information. We were seeing the women, which are the women we actually start medicine on now, we're actually having more protective effects with it. But when you average it out, it looks really bad. But when you take it for what we're doing in real life, they're two different stories. So starting there is understanding that the study that stopped it all was doing wasn't even checking on the women we'd actually give this medication to. And the breast cancer one is really an important one because that one just got overblown. Like that one, I don't even know how to say it anywhere else, but that was just a clickbait headline because the absolute risk versus relative risk, which is all this fun statistic stuff, it wasn't anything significant even in that age frame. It is the same in using these medicines that we don't even really use today, but it is the same as drinking a glass of wine a day. So no one's out there having the same black box warning every time you open up your glass of wine. So compare and contrast, it was a big statement to make when we don't have a big story to tell with it. Once we started piecing this, because that stopped everyone talking about it for over a decade. And then around 2013, 2014, people said, I mean, women seem to be not doing well with this. We've got to have something we can do to help them. Let me look back. And that's the time, that's how long it took for us to look back at the data that was actually put out and say, I'm not really a scientist, but I'm someone who listens to scientists. But when they looked back and said, hey, when we actually look at the study for who we actually give this medication to and what we're doing, this is way overblown and way overstated. But the scare was already out there. The big headline was out there. The fear was out there, and nobody was going to use it because of how scary it had been. And they'd add the black box warning. So every time you did try to give someone something, they opened that up. And even if they wanted to, 70% of them would not start the medication. It's taken from then until 2025 for us to say, hey, let's at least take off this black box warning. Let's at least peel away this level that says that this is the most dangerous medicine you could give. Because remember, most of the time, the estrogen you're getting from your doctor is identical looking to the estrogen in your body. That's been flowing through your body for decades. It's not some scary chemical that we're putting into your body you've never seen before. This is something that looks almost identical to what your body makes. So it makes sense for us to say, hey, let's not put a scary box on it, but everyone should know and everyone should talk with their doctor because some people it's scarier to give than others, but it's not a huge everyone should be scared. It's like, hey, in this situation, these are your risks, and this is why I would want to start you on the lowest dose or only do vaginal estrogen, or maybe we can try a medicine that works a different way. There are a ton of non-hormonal medications that are amazing. Of course, they're not as good at giving you exactly what your body lost, but if you have scary underlying things going on, like you actually have breast cancer and you know it's fed by estrogen, even if you didn't want to be on hormonal medicines, they may suppress the estrogen in your body anyways because we know your body is feeding off of it, then you may need something else to help with the symptoms you're having around it. That's why we got a black box warning, because it's okay to see that the study that was done that started it all was not done out of malice, and it was not done to take something away. But once we really understood and looked at it, we can peel away all the bad signals we learned from it. We learned some great stuff from it. I mean, and that actual study is still going on because it has multiple arms and it's a huge study, but that part of it was stopped then. But they made it sound as if all studies were stopped on it, which is also not true. I mean, they did some really good PR for that one.
They did. Whoever organized that, they had that published in the Lancet. They had the press release, and the cat was out of the bag, and you couldn't pull it back in. And they didn't peer review it. And just so our listeners know, anytime you do a big study and you release it, you have it peer reviewed. So the investigators would write everything up, and they would send it to peers and colleagues to look at it to give feedback before it would ever get published or anyone would see any of the results. So they broke a bunch of protocols to express to the world, and through their publication in the Lancet and the press conference, this was very, very backwards to the way that science is normally done. So we have reinvestigated and rejiggered all these things. And I just wanted to share a really interesting statistic. So since that removal, the FDA removed it November 10th, 2025. This spring, the International Society of Study of Women's Sexual Health at their conference shared that there has been a 72% surge in estrogen prescriptions after the removal of the FDA Black warning. So that lets us know that women are getting the message. People are prescribing, doctors are feeling this is okay. One of the things I did want to talk about, and I know that you've written about, is that yay, we can now have estrogen. Yay. We, no longer have this black box warning, but now there is a patch shortage that's following it. And it seems like the story of how this system was never actually believing that women were going to say, yes, we want this. Now that this is all okay, give us our estrogen. So what's going on with that?
My goodness. Yes. I wrote an article about this in February, and it's still a major issue come April. So know that this has been going on for quite a while. Companies knew before any of us knew that this was going to come down the pipe. Exactly like you were saying, Megan, they knew, but they didn't believe that people were going to make this major surge. And these companies that make patches are trying to make a profit. So they're hedging their bets on how much they need to make and how much is going to sit on a shelf or end up needing to get thrown away. So they didn't take it seriously enough. And there aren't enough companies making it. This is one of the big things I think we don't notice. If you want to know how many companies are making erectile dysfunction medicines, it's
A lot.
so many. And so there's backup plans. When one company doesn't have enough, there's multiple other global companies that can kind of keep it from being a long-standing issue for people that need to have their erection.
Right. That's so much more important than us having our estrogen.
Yes. So there is multiple safeguards that are there. Well, there aren't that many companies that made the estrogen patch. And looking back on it, there's a kind of an understanding, because when there's a big black box warning they're putting on it, that makes it really scary for them to invest money into it. And so understood, those companies took a chance. They put it out before this was going on. But even though they took a chance on it, they didn't upsurge knowing that there's going to be this big change, and haven't yet. And again, there's other things like global supply chain and whatnot, but it's because we already have less companies that are investing in there being an estrogen patch and then having difficulty to upsurge it quick enough to take care of it. Women, again, are left with the ramifications. So if you were already on it, if you had already decided beforehand that you were going to, do it even though the black box warning was there, you are in a strife, because the one you found that works really well and works perfect for you, they may not have it anymore, or they may only have 1 month at a time they'll give it to you, or they'll send you to another pharmacy like 2 counties away to find it. Or they'll say, hey, just use this one instead. They're all formulated similar, but they're not the same. And again, we are not a one size fits all. So even if you're getting the same dose of an estrogen patch, if it's from a different production company, it may not do the same thing for you. So it can kind of feel like you're having to start over. And it's not good for you medically, and it's not good for you mentally, socioeconomically, all the above. Or they may only have a patch that your insurance won't cover. So you went from getting it for like $20 every 3 months to getting it for $300 a month, which is dumb. It's not okay. But women, because you need it, because you know what it felt like without it, are having to pay that, which is an economic issue for many people. So there are so many levels that are hard. And again, I always say, if we had the number of companies we had for the erectile issues, it wouldn't feel this bad for this long. But we don't, and that's sad. And that's because there's less invested in women's health, which makes me very sad.
It makes me sad too. And thinking about what you were talking about at the beginning, the lack of research. Women weren't even required to be studied until 1993 when Congress passed a law saying you have to do this. So we're very behind, but it feels like we're making progress. And there's doctors and practitioners there out in the world like you that are menopause trained and certified, who are sharing the word and building out a lot of the programming and the education that you have. If a woman listening right now has been putting off dealing with her perimenopause symptoms because of fear, because of the old warning, because her doctor has been dismissing her, or just not knowing where to start, what are 3 things that you want her to walk away knowing?
So first of all, it is not a quote all in your head, even though the estrogen receptors are changing what's going on in your brain. This is not a you issue. This is a transition issue. And it happens universally to every woman that lives long enough to go through the menopause transition. You are not alone. And if you feel comfortable and you talk to others about it, you'll be shocked how many women say, "That's me too. I thought I was alone." So don't be afraid to say, "This is what's going on with me," to say, "This is what's happening," because you will be shocked how many light bulb, "That is me too," you'll find with other women. So you are not alone is the number one thing. The number two thing is you don't have to grit and bear it. There are so many options and so many things that can be done, and it's not a one size fits all. There is what I call a toolbox of different kits. Yes, some of them may work for more people than others, but just because something worked for someone else or there's someone tells you you have to go this way, you'll be shocked how many options there are and how it can be personalized for you. And it's not rocket science to personalize it. It's just trial and error. And so there are so many things you can do. So don't feel like you are stuck and if I don't do this, I can't feel better. And then number three is your doctor usually, hopefully, wants to help. And so coming in with your story and not being afraid to tell them and not making them feel like they have to pull it out of you is important and can help you get the best care possible. But if you feel like your doctor's just giving you roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, then it may be time to transition this stage of your care to a doctor that is, or a practitioner that is certified in menopause, because they may have more up-to-date knowledge on what's going on. Even if you live in a location that is not readily available to find a menopause specialist or menopause practitioner, that's what telehealth is for. And the great thing about this is it's a lot of a talking. It's not the physical exam you need with your gynecologist. I was used to have people say, "How do I do a telemed gynecology appointment?" It's not that kind of an appointment. So it's about hearing your story to understand what's the best way to treat it. If you can, start journaling it, writing it down, putting notes when things are happening or how you're feeling, that can help direct your care and help it from going, "I don't feel great," which isn't a really effective starting point, to saying, "Hey, 4 nights a week, I'm waking up 3 times for night sweats, and this is when it's happening. And after I drink a glass of wine, I notice it more, or if I eat this certain thing, I notice it more." So take the time to track what's going on in your body. Again, prioritize what's going on with you so that you can get the best care. And if that still doesn't get you the best care, find the right kind of care.
Okay, so we are remembering that we are not alone. We
Mhm.
are 51% of the population, friends.
Yeah.
So everyone that you know that also has a vagina will also have to go through the menopause transition. Two, we don't have to grit and bear it. There is help out there, there's support, and there are, as Dr. Berg said, a toolbox of options that your doctor can work both hormonally and non hormonally to support your symptoms. And three, remember that giving your doctor some compassion by providing them with the information that you have, knowing yourself and sharing that with them because you know the most about your own body. And as Dr. Berg pointed out, not all doctors get the same training. So if your doctor is no longer able to support you in the way that you need, it might be time to seek out a menopause specific practitioner who has taken the time and had the opportunity to further educate themselves on how to support women going through the menopause transition. Dr. Berg, it has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us and for everything that you have done to support women's health with Selfority. Are there any parting words that you would like to leave with the audience?
Well, first, I want to say thank you for having me. I really appreciate this time to get to talk with you. I've loved getting to know you and talking with you, and audience and people out there. You are not alone. This is a transition stage to get you to the best part of your life. So this is not an ending. This is a transition.
I love that. Not an ending. This is a transition. Thank you so much for listening with us. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Can you do me a favor? If this was helpful, share it with one person who might need to hear it today. Our bodies didn't come with a user manual, and this perimenopause thing can feel confusing and lonely. But you're not alone, you're not crazy, and you're definitely not broken. And maybe someone in your life needs that reminder too. Let's spread the word and be kind to each other and ourselves. Now the legal bit. I'm a nutritionist, but I'm not your nutritionist. This podcast is for information and education only. No client relationship was formed. Always seek medical advice when necessary. I'll see you next Wednesday morning.